The phone rang at 7:49 that night, slicing through the quiet. Before I even lifted it, I knew it was her. My daughter's voice exploded the moment I answered high, furious, shaking at the edges. "Mom, where are you? What did you do?" I didn't raise my voice, but I didn't match her panic. I simply held the phone close enough to hear her breath stutter. "Corinne," I said softly, "did you enjoy my gift?" For a moment, everything on her end went dead still. No yelling, no clatter, no breath, just the sharp, stunned silence of someone who finally understood she had pushed the wrong person. 8 hours earlier, I stood on Corinne's porch with a tin of ginger cookies tucked under my arm and a small silver gift bag in my free hand. I had spent the morning baking, humming a tune from my childhood, taking comfort in familiar movements, the kind you fall back on when you want to feel useful, wanted, or simply remembered. I nudged the door open the way she always told me to, Mom. "Just come in. You don't have to knock," and stepped inside. I meant to call out a cheerful hello. Instead, I stopped just short of the dining room when I heard my name. "So she'll come up here, right when I cue her," Corinne said, her voice bright with excitement. "We hand her the apron and the goofy whisk. She'll blush. And everyone will laugh. It'll be perfect." Another voice snorted. "Are we keeping the age joke?" "Oh, for sure. You know how she gets when people mention it." A small pause. A smirk hidden inside the words. "She's so sensitive. It'll be adorable." More laughter. Real laughter. The kind that didn't make room for me. My fingers tightened around the tin of cookies. I listened because I couldn't seem to move as paper rustled, and someone read out loud a line about me being hopelessly old-fashioned, another about not keeping up with the times. And then the punchline: Corinne was particularly proud of the slideshow of me stumbling over a rug at the church potluck. "That part will kill," she said. "The whole room will crack up." Something inside me didn't break. It just stopped. Quietly, they had written a skit, a Christmas performance, about me, about my age, about my supposed incompetence, planned it, refined it, rehearsed it like I was a prop they could dress up and laugh at. The floorboard under my heel creaked softly. I took one step back, then another. I didn't want to know if they heard. I didn't want to hear my name again. Softened into a joke. Outside. The air hit me full in the face, cold but steady. Nothing like the brittle sharpness in that room. I walked down the steps with the cookies pressed to my chest and the silver gift bag trembling in my hand. I made it to my car without once looking back at the house my daughter had filled with people who laughed at the idea of humiliating me. I sat behind the wheel, my nails digging lightly into my palm, and let the truth settle in the way cold settles into old bones, slowly, insistently, without mercy. I had been the quiet one all my life, but something about the way they rehearsed that laughter, my own daughter leading it, shifted something in me that I hadn't felt in years. Whatever came next would not be quiet. My name is Marion. I am 71 years old, and somewhere along the way, my own family decided that was the most interesting thing about me. On the drive home from Corinne's house, I kept hearing her laughter echo in my head, overlapping with older versions of her voice. The little girl who used to scream, "Mom, watch me," on the playground had turned into a woman who made jokes about whether I would trip over the steps. When I pulled into the small driveway behind my duplex, I sat there a moment with the engine off. The cookies were still on the passenger seat. The silver gift bag had a faint crease where my hand had crushed it. I did not cry. I had cried enough for this family to last several lifetimes. Inside, I set the cookies on the counter and put the gift bag on the table. The house was quiet. It had been quiet since my husband, Edgar, died. Lung cancer had taken him 12 years ago, slowly, and then all at once. I remembered the last conversation we had about the children. "They will need you," he had said. his voice thin but steady. You keep the bones of this family together. I am not sure they see me that way. I had answered back then. He smiled at me from that hospital bed, as if my doubt amused him. They will. You are the one who shows up. After he was gone. That is exactly what I did. I showed up. I showed up to Corinne's first big work event, standing in the back while she floated around in a sleek navy dress, introducing herself as the one who makes everything happen. When I waved from the doorway, she gave me a strained smile. "Mom, you came," she said, walking over. "You should have told me." I would have, I do not know. Warned people. Warned them I had tried to make it a joke. She glanced at my cardigan, my sensible shoes, about my mom. You know. "You are sweet, but this is kind of a high-end thing." I laughed then, to help her save face. I promised not to break the aesthetic. She kissed my cheek, quick and distracted. "You are fine. Just stay near the back so the photographers can focus on the brand partners." Years passed like that. I showed up with casseroles and extra hands whenever she moved apartments. I babysat her son when she needed to rehearse a presentation. I stayed late to clean up after her parties, stacking plates while she posed for one last group photo. The comments started small. "Mom, that blouse is cute, but maybe not for photos," she would say. Or, "Could you not mention your age so much? It makes people weird." I tried to adjust. I bought a new coat when she said the old one looked too frumpy. I practiced standing up straighter in the mirror after she nudged my shoulder and murmured, "Posture, Mom." People read energy. The worst one came on a day that should have been simple. We were at a department store, looking for a dress for her company's winter gala. She tried on something sparkly and stepped out of the fitting room to show me. "You look beautiful," I said, meaning every word. She studied her reflection, then caught sight of me behind her. My plain gray sweater, my thinning hair pulled back, my old leather purse. She sighed. "Mom, can you just try not to look so old at the event?" I blinked. "I am 70, Corinne. I know, she said quickly. "But there will be cameras everywhere. People tag everything. I just do not want anyone thinking I dragged my grandma along." I felt something inside me fold up neatly and tuck itself away. After that, I stopped asking if she wanted me at her events. She would tell me when she needed help setting up, or watching her son, or cooking something that tasted like a real holiday, but she rarely asked me to stay once the guests arrived. Over time, they built a version of me that suited them. The harmless fixture in the background, the reliable babysitter, the woman you could joke about being so old school without expecting any pushback. Standing there in my kitchen after leaving her house that afternoon, I realized how far that version had drifted from the woman I actually was. Once, a long time ago, I had been the person who organized archives for an entire school district, who knew where every last record lived and how to find it in under 10 minutes. I had navigated complex systems, stubborn principles, and tighter budgets than anyone admitted out loud. Now my own daughter had reduced me to a prop in a Christmas skit. I made myself a cup of tea with hands that had filed thousands of folders and bandaged dozens of scraped knees. The steam rose between my fingers. Somewhere under the weight of all those years, something inside me shifted, making room for a thought I had spent most of my life pushing away. They had invented a version of me that made their lives easier. I did not have to keep playing along. I carried my cup of tea to the small table by the window, the one spot in my duplex where I kept the old photo box. The cardboard was soft at the corners from decades of opening and closing. I pulled it toward me and lifted the lid. The first photo on top showed a younger version of me standing in Old Town Tacoma with Edgar, both of us smiling under the faded winter lights. The kids were small then, bundled in scarves, cheeks flushed red from the cold. Corinne had been 8, clinging to my arm with her mittened hand. I traced her little face with my thumb. There was a time she looked at me like I was the safest place in the world. Underneath that photo was another stadium district, a Christmas parade. I remembered that day clearly. I had spent the morning sewing patches onto my son's coat, making sure he did not freeze. Corinne had insisted on wearing the red hat her cousin owned. She cried when the fluff got wet, and I gave her my own knitted beanie, walking the rest of the night with cold ears because she wanted to look like the other girls. I heard Edgar's voice in my memory, warm and steady. She wants to fit in. She is trying. He had always offered grace where I offered rules. But he had also warned me about letting myself disappear. Do not shrink to fit people who have grown smaller, he told me once. He said it after Corinne snapped at me in front of her friends, embarrassed because I had mispronounced the name of a new pop singer. I had laughed it off then. Told him she was just a teenager. Told him all girls her age acted out. He squeezed my hand and said nothing more. But the worry in his eyes lingered long after the moment passed. I pushed aside more photos. Christmas mornings over the years. I noticed something I had never let myself see clearly. Every picture had the same pattern. I gave, they took. I hosted dinners. They complained about the seasoning. I bought gifts with money I barely had. They compared them to whatever was newest, shiniest, trending that year. I made room for them. They made less room for me. Still, I showed up. I kept showing up because that was what mothers did. Near the bottom of the box, I found a school portrait of Corinne from middle school. Her hair was shorter then, tucked behind her ears. Her smile was tight, almost forced. I remembered that year. She came home crying after a classmate mocked her secondhand sneakers during a group presentation. When I tried to comfort her, she pushed my arms away. Everyone was laughing. She said, "You do not get it." I do. I told her. Kids can be cruel. She stared at my clothes, my simple cardigan, my plain loafers. No, Mom. They laughed because of how I looked. That was the night she begged me to let her skip school until she could reinvent herself. We did not have the money for new clothes. But I sewed what I could, patched what I could not, and found a winter coat from the church donation drive. She cried the first time she tried it on. "Everyone will know it is secondhand. It will keep you warm," I said. "I want to be normal," she whispered. I remembered holding her that night, promising her she was enough, but something inside her changed around that time. She started watching people differently, me included, measuring them, ranking them, deciding who made her look better and who made her look worse. Maybe she started protecting herself in the only way she knew, by stepping on anything that reminded her of the girl who had once been humiliated at school. I placed the photo back in the box and closed the lid gently. My breath fogged lightly against the window beside me. Outside, the winter air sat heavy and unmoving. The kind Tacoma carried through December like a memory it refused to release. Winters do not forget. They hold on to the things we try to push away, and I was beginning to understand that my daughter had been carrying her own bruises for a long time, bruises she had learned to hide by making someone else smaller. The more I stared at that closed photo box, the more another sound pushed in around the edges of my thoughts, the bright, rehearsed voices from Corinne's dining room. I set my cup down and let myself go back to that doorway, to the exact words I had heard before I slipped away. Her friend Tessa spoke first, her tone excited. "So, walk me through it again. I want to make sure I get the cue right for the music." Corinne sounded delighted with herself. "Okay." We finish the kids' carol, the lights dim a little, and then I say, "And now, a special appearance from the woman who taught me everything I know about being stuck in the past." There was a wave of laughter. Tessa clapped her hands once, cruel but hysterical. Corinne laughed along. I call Mom up to the stage. We put the apron on her, the one with the giant cartoon turkey. I hand her that old metal whisk. You know, the one she is weirdly attached to. Another voice, probably her assistant, chimed in, the one with the dent. Yes, Corinne said, the dent is perfect. It screams ancient kitchen. Then I say, everyone. This is my mother. She still thinks you can fix anything with a casserole. I remembered how carefully I had packed that whisk when I moved after Edgar died. I had told myself it was because it made the best batter. Hearing it described like a relic made my stomach tighten. Tessa snorted. What about the photos? Where do they go right after the line about casseroles? Corinne replied. We flashed the slide of her tripping over the rug at the church potluck. I say, some people cannot handle modern flooring. The room will lose it. Someone slapped the table. You are wicked. Corinne sounded proud. It gives the whole night a human moment. People love that. There was another pause. Paper shuffling. The soft click of a pen. And the stain joke, Tessa asked. Do not forget that. It is my favorite. Corinne exhaled a pleased little sigh. Oh, I would never forget that. As I am tying the apron, I will say, careful. Everyone? She is known to leave oil stains on every room she walks through. Then we spotlight her shoes. I might even get the camera to zoom in. People will scream. My fingers had locked around the cookie tin when I heard that, pressing the metal into my palm. I could almost feel the phantom smear of oil under my thumbnail. The one I had stared at over the sink years ago, in the dining room. Tessa's voice dropped slightly. Your mom is not going to be mad. Corinne brushed the concern aside without hesitation. She will blush and laugh and apologize. Like always, she will say something like, oh, Corinne, and pat my arm. She never fights back. Ever, someone asked. Never. Corinne said, she hates conflict more than anything. That is what makes it work. It is safe to tease someone who will not push back. The words landed with a strange clarity, as if they had been spelled out in front of me. Safe. They thought I was safe to use. Safe to mock. Safe to build an entire performance around because I would swallow it like I swallowed everything else. Back at my kitchen table, I realized my hands were trembling at the memory. Not from rage, but from something sharper. It felt like stepping into a room and finally seeing where all the exits were. For years I had tried to make my softness into a gift. I smoothed arguments. I took on extra work. I made excuses for the people I loved when they hurt me. I thought endurance was the same thing as love. Sitting there, hearing my daughter's voice echo in my mind, I understood that she had built an entire show on the assumption that I would choose embarrassment over disruption. She had no idea that something inside me had already shifted the moment I stepped off her porch. They were planning a performance. They did not know I had decided not to play my part. I did not look back at Corinne's house. The door shut behind me with a soft click, and that was the only sound I allowed myself. No slammed hinges, no shouted words, no dramatic exit she could twist into a story about her fragile, overreacting mother. Silent steps down the walkway, silent breath in the cold. I reached my car and set the cookies on the passenger seat. The silver gift bag rested beside them. Its paper crumpled where my fingers had tightened earlier. My keys felt heavier than they should have. Even turning the ignition took effort, as if I needed to convince the car that I truly intended to leave. When the engine finally hummed, I pulled away from the curb without hesitation. The streetlights blurred past me as I drove toward Ruston Way. The water was dark at that hour, the kind of dark that holds its own shape. My breath fogged the windshield faster than the heater could clear it. I cracked the window, letting in the sharp air. It steadied me. at a stoplight. My phone buzzed. A text from Corinne lit the screen. "Mom, where did you go? We need to finish planning the program." I stared at it for a long moment. The tone was the same tone she always used, lightly irritated, dismissive, entitled, as if I were an employee who had stepped away without permission. Another message followed. "Do not make this difficult. I need you here." I pressed my thumb to the screen, hovering over the reply box, before pulling my hand away entirely. No, not again. I deleted the thread. My phone went dark. The silence that followed was not the kind that wrapped itself around guilt or fear. It was cleaner, more precise, like the snap of a thread that had been pulled tight for too long. The road opened up as I reached the waterfront. Restaurants and shops were mostly dark at that hour, their neon signs dimmed to soft glows. I parked facing the water and shut off the engine. The quiet felt absolute. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. The shame washed over me first, the heavy, familiar kind. The kind that whispered, I should have handled the situation differently. That mothers do not walk out. That perhaps I had misunderstood and was making a scene. Then something else followed behind it. Not anger. Not yet. Something clearer. Awakening. A memory surfaced. Lydia's voice. Calm. Wry. Sharp enough to cut through moments exactly like this. Power sits quietly until you pick it up. She told me once when I had avoided standing up to Corinne over something trivial. An argument about whether I should watch her son during a weekend I had already made plans for. I had backed down, as always. Lydia had only sighed. You keep giving her the outline, she said. Then you wonder why she keeps writing your part. I opened my eyes and let that settle inside me now. Power sits quietly until you pick it up. I had spent years stepping around conflict, cushioning blow after blow with excuses, apologies, explanations. I had chosen silence because I believed it kept the peace. But sitting there in my car, the cold from the cracked window brushing my cheek, I understood something different. This silence was not surrender. It was a room I had stepped into on my own, with my own key. I reached across the seat and lifted the gift bag. The crease in the silver paper looked like a scar, thin, deliberate, impossible to undo. I smoothed it with my thumb, not to fix it, but to acknowledge it. My phone buzzed again. I let it ring until it stopped. I watched the screen fade back to black, feeling the space between who I had been and who I was becoming widen by the minute. I did not owe my presence to someone who used it as a punchline. I sat there with the engine off, listening to the soft ticking as it cooled, until one name rose above the noise in my head. Lydia. I pulled out my phone, scrolled past Corinne's name, and tapped Lydia Caro. She picked up before the second ring. Marion. She said, "You never call this late unless something is wrong." Her voice steadied me in a way the heater never could. I am sitting by the water, I said. Near Ruston Way, that bad. She answered. Tell me. The words felt thick at first, but once I started, they did not stop. I told her about the apron, the dented whisk, the slideshow of me stumbling. I repeated the line about oil stains, each syllable scraping its way out of my throat. When I finished, Lydia was quiet. I could hear her breathing, slow and controlled. So they wrote you into the program, she said finally. Not as a guest, as a joke. Yes, and your daughter is the one leading it. Yes. Are you home? She asked. No. I drove away. A pause. Then, softer. Good. Can you come here? Her condo was only 15 minutes from the waterfront. I started the engine again and let her voice stay with me as I drove. By the time I reached her building, Lydia was already waiting by the lobby door in a burgundy robe and a wool scarf thrown over it like an afterthought. Her gray hair was pulled back, but wisps had escaped, framing her face. "You look like you swallowed glass," she said as I walked in. "It feels close to that," I answered. She led me upstairs, moving carefully but with a straight back. Once inside, she gestured me toward the kitchen table. Legal pads and manila folders were stacked neatly at one end. "Even in retirement, sit," she said. "Tell it again. This time, do not soften it." So I did. I repeated every word I could remember, every laugh, every casual dismissal. I told her how my name had been used like a prop, not a person. When I finished, Lydia leaned back in her chair and studied me. "You are not just hurt, Marion," she said. "You are being used." "I know she is unkind," I said, "but she is my daughter, and you are her mother, not her stage decoration." I exhaled slowly. She will say she was joking, that I am overreacting. She always does. Lydia's eyes sharpened. "You are allowed to react to being targeted." "That is not overreacting. That is being awake." I looked down at my hands. I left. For the first time, I just left. "Good," she said again, her voice firmer now. "You removed yourself from the scene. Now you need to decide what you are going to do with the rest of the play. I do not want to destroy her life." I said, "I just do not want to be stepped on anymore." "That is not destruction. That is self-respect." Lydia tapped the table once. "Do you remember what Edgar and I worked on before he passed?" I frowned. "The will. Some trust documents. You handled everything. And you filed everything away like a good archivist." She said, "Did you ever actually read through it, Marion? Not just sign, but read." I skimmed. I admitted. "He said he trusted you." "I trusted him." Lydia shook her head. A small, frustrated movement. "Your husband was not just thinking about money. He was thinking about protection. For you." I felt a flicker of unease. "Protection from what?" "From this," she said. "From being cornered by the very people he knew might take advantage when he was no longer here to stand in front of you." I swallowed. "You think he saw this coming?" "I think he understood patterns," Lydia replied, "and he made sure you would not be powerless if those patterns hardened." I sat very still, the memory of the sealed envelope at home pressing against the back of my mind like a hand on a closed door. When I got home from Lydia's, the house felt different, not quieter, just sharper, as if the walls were listening. I set my coat over the chair, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled down the old metal lockbox Edgar had insisted we buy when he first got sick. I carried it to the kitchen table and sat for a long moment with my hands resting on the lid. Lydia's words echoed in my mind. "Your husband made sure you would not be powerless." I opened the box. Inside, under our marriage license and a bundle of old photographs, was a white envelope I had never touched. Edgar's handwriting stretched across the front in the neat, looping script he always used for things that mattered. "For when you feel small." My chest tightened. I slid a finger under the seal and broke it open. A stack of documents slipped out thicker than I expected. The first page was a letter, written in Edgar's hand, dated 2 months before he passed. "Marion, you give to everyone until you are empty, and you rarely let anyone protect you. So I am protecting you the only way I can now. If you are reading this, it means you need to remember who you are, not who people have decided you ought to be." I pressed my palm to the page. For a moment, I could almost feel the warmth of his hand beneath mine. I turned to the documents he'd attached. Property transfer records, updated business registrations, a detailed list of assets, and then near the middle of the stack, a deed. I blinked at it, unsure I was reading correctly. "Edgar," I whispered. "What did you do?" He had transferred ownership of his small rental business, fully into my name, not the family's, not the children's, mine. I flipped forward. Another deed. This one listed a storage and commercial lot off Pacific Highway. My breath caught. Corinne's event company used that building. She kept all her decorations, lighting equipment, backdrops, and archived materials there. She had never paid rent. She told everyone the owner, a family friend, let her use it for free. I stared at the document, feeling the shape of the truth settle into place. There was no family friend. It had been Edgar's, and then it had been mine. And she had been storing her entire business inside my property without paying a single dollar for years. My fingers tightened around the edge of the deed. I continued reading. A trust clause. Edgar's signature. Lydia's notarization. It bypassed Corinne completely and designated the rental revenue, if I ever chose to collect it, to be funneled into a fund for community scholarships. My husband's voice returned, soft and steady in my memory. Someone has to protect you when I am not here. I set the papers down, hands trembling. Not from fear this time. Not even from anger, from clarity. For years, Corinne had treated me like a burden, a relic, a gentle, pliable thing she could mold to fit her narrative. She had depended on my silence, my compliance, my willingness to be small. But while she rehearsed jokes about oil stains and aprons, she had been storing her entire professional world inside a building she did not own. I did. The victim in her story had been holding the keys the whole time. I kept the envelope open on the table. The documents spread out like a map I had never learned to read. Edgar had left me every tool I needed. I had simply never believed I was allowed to use them. The clock read a little past 9 when I called Lydia again. She answered immediately. "You found it," she said. "I found all of it." I replied. "The property transfers, the business deeds, the storage building." I let out a slow exhale. Corinne has everything for her company in that building. Every backdrop, every stage piece. All of it. I suspected as much. Lydia said, "She always liked taking without asking." I sat down, the chair creaking softly beneath me. "It feels wrong. She is my daughter. That is not the same thing as being entitled to your resources," Lydia said. "And it certainly does not give her the right to humiliate you publicly." I pressed my fingers to my forehead. "If I do this, it will hurt her, Shay. If you do nothing, she will hurt you," Lydia answered. "Repeatedly. From what you told me, she already has." "That is not revenge," I murmured. "No," Lydia said firmly. "It is boundaries. Boundaries she has not respected in years." I rested my hand on the deed of the storage unit. "She uses this building like it belongs to her. And now," Lydia said, "you decide whether she keeps using it." I closed my eyes. The image of Corinne laughing at the dining table flickered through my mind, the kind of laughter that left no room for me in the room. "I do not want to humiliate her," I said. "I refuse to become the mirror of what she did." "Then do it by the book," Lydia said. "Not loud, not cruel, just lawful." I nodded slowly. "Lawful." I repeated. "Clean, simple." I could hear the shift in Lydia's voice when she said, "Marion, I want you to listen carefully. You are not plotting to embarrass her. You are simply reclaiming what is yours." The truth of that sentence settled into my bones. I picked up Edgar's letter again. His handwriting wavered slightly near the end. His illness had been worse by then, but each word still felt solid enough to stand on. "If you are reading this, it means you need to remember who you are." I folded the letter gently and set it aside. "Lydia," I said, "help me do this right." She did not hesitate. "Tomorrow morning, we will draft the notices. You will sign them. We will send them through a courier service. And everything will be done according to the law." My breath came steadier now. "Tomorrow," I said. "Tonight," Lydia added. "You need to take care of yourself." I looked at my hands steady for the first time that day and slid the documents back into the envelope. one by one. "Do you think I am being petty?" I asked quietly. "No," Lydia said. "I think you are finally stepping into the space Edgar left for you. He did not build protections for you so you could stay silent forever." A warmth spread through my chest. Small, but unmistakable. "Thank you," I whispered. "You do not owe me thanks," Lydia said. "You owe yourself permission." I hung up and held the envelope for a long moment, feeling the weight of it settle into my palms. It was not heavy the way burden was heavy. It was heavy the way truth is heavy, solid, undeniable, and finally, mine to carry. I placed it beside the silver gift bag still sitting on my counter. For the first time in years, I felt the faintest sense of belonging in my own life. As if a house I had lived in forever had finally unlocked a door I had forgotten existed. The next morning, Lydia arrived with her work bag as if she had never retired a day in her life. "I brought my laptop," she said, shrugging out of her coat, "and a printer. Do you still have that extension cord in the hall closet?" I said. "I will get it." By the time I came back, she had already cleared a space on the dining table, pushing aside my cookie tin and the silver gift bag. The envelope from Edgar sat in the center like a quiet witness. Lydia opened her laptop, typed in her password, and motioned for me to sit. "First, we do this exactly right," she said. "No shortcuts, no improvising. You ready?" "As ready as I can be," I answered. She pulled one of the deeds closer and adjusted her glasses. "This is the storage property. Your name is on the title. We will start with a lease termination notice, even if there was never a formal lease. We will formalize the relationship in retrospect and close it at the same time." "That sounds intense," I said. "It sounds correct," she replied. "Correction usually feels harsh to people who are used to getting things for free." I watched her fingers move across the keyboard, steady and precise. She murmured as she typed, "Notice of termination of occupancy. Effective 30 days from date of receipt." 30 days, I asked. That is not very long. "She has been taking advantage for years," Lydia said. 30 days is a kindness. We could make it less." I thought of Corinne's storage racks, the carefully labeled bins, the towering shelves of seasonal decor. For a second, I saw her face when she realized all of it sat at my mercy. "Leave it at 30, I said. "I am not trying to destroy her work." "Good," Lydia replied, not looking up. "You are enforcing a boundary, not salting the earth." She moved on to the next section. Outstanding payment demands. "You have the right to charge back rent. We will not go too far. Let us calculate a modest amount, enough to make the principle clear." She opened a spreadsheet and began entering numbers. Dates. Approximate rental values. I watched the total climb. "That is more than I expected," I said softly. "It is still less than market would allow," she said. "You can waive it if you choose, or redirect it somewhere else." "Redirect," I said immediately. "I do not want her money in my account." "To the scholarship fund," Lydia nodded. "In Edgar's name." We worked in near silence for a while. The only sound the tapping of keys and the occasional click of the mouse. When the first set of documents was ready, she turned the screen toward me, termination notice, payment summary, and a formal statement revoking any implied permission for continued use. She said, "Read them." I read every line this time. The language was firm but not cruel. It named me as owner, her as occupant. It laid out expectations, deadlines, and consequences. It did not apologize. At the bottom of each document was a blank line with my name printed neatly beneath it. My hand hovered over the pen for a moment. Lydia watched me, saying nothing. "This feels like stepping onto a stage," I said. "Then at least this time, you are the one holding the script," she replied. I pressed the pen to paper and signed. Once, twice, 3 times. By the time I finished, my signature no longer looked like an echo of the woman they called too sensitive. It looked like someone I recognized from a long time ago. We should also formalize the trust restructuring Edgar outlined, Lydia said. If you agree with his intentions. I do, I said. Completely. We printed and signed those documents as well. The trust would bypass Corinne and direct the rental income into the fund Edgar had wanted. My granddaughter and other young people in Tacoma would have a chance at scholarships that did not depend on anyone's ego. When everything was printed, collated, and clipped together, Lydia called a courier service. Delivery during the Christmas rehearsal, she instructed the dispatcher, this evening, between 6 and 7, to the church hall on Maple Avenue, under the name of Corinne Ellery Holt and the event company. She rattled off the address, then handed me the phone. They require confirmation, she said. This is Marion. I told the dispatcher. Yes, I confirm. Tonight. After I hung up, Lydia began sliding the documents into a large, cream-colored envelope. She left a little space at the top. You wanted to add something, she said. In your own hand. I reached for a smaller sheet of stationery, the kind I used for thank you notes. My hand did not shake as I wrote. Use your own resources this year. I placed the note on top of the documents and sealed the envelope. Are you sure about that line? Lydia asked. I nodded. She understands those words. Yes, Lydia said quietly. She will. The church hall on Maple Avenue was already buzzing when the courier stepped through the double doors. I wasn't there to see it, but later I heard the details from 2 different people, and they matched almost word for word. Corinne was at the front of the room, directing volunteers as if she were choreographing a Broadway performance. No, the poinsettias go there, she said sharply. This year has to look polished. No mistakes, her friends nodded, carrying garlands from one corner to another. The courier hesitated near the entrance, holding the cream-colored envelope with my handwriting on the front. He checked the name twice, then approached a young woman adjusting the stage lights. I have a delivery for Corinne Ellery Holt, he said. She pointed him forward. She's right there. The one in the red dress. Corinne turned, her face brightening for the stranger. She always lit up when she thought something new might make her look important. A delivery for me, she laughed lightly. Oh, that is too funny. Must be from a client. She slit the envelope open with a fingernail and pulled out the stack of documents. Her smile froze almost instantly. What is this? She muttered. Tessa stepped closer. What's wrong? Corinne flipped the first page fully open. Her breath caught. It is a notice. No, this cannot be right. Then she read the line naming me as the owner of the storage property. Someone nearby whispered, Wait. Her mother owns that place. Another voice followed. Lower. I thought she rented it for free. She bragged about that last year. Corinne's face drained color so fast, she looked almost translucent. She skimmed the payment summary, the trust clause, the termination date. Each page turned with a faint snap. My mother would never, she whispered, but the rest of the sentence died before it fully formed. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Her husband, Drew, stepped forward, frowning. What is going on? She pressed the papers to her chest, as if that would hide them. It is nothing. Someone made a mistake. Drew reached out. Corinne, hand it to me. I said it is nothing, she snapped. He didn't wait. He pulled the documents gently from her grip and scanned the first 2 lines. His jaw tightened. This is from your mother, he said. This is legal. This is real. No, Corinne insisted. She would not do this. She knows I need that building. She knows she would not. She did, Drew said. His voice cracked in the middle, the way a voice does when the truth hits harder than expected. And she had every right. Corinne's eyes filled. But it wasn't sorrow, it was panic. "She is humiliating me," she whispered. "Tonight of all nights, she is humiliating me." Drew shook his head. "You did that yourself." She staggered back a step as if he'd struck her. People were murmuring again. Someone asked, "Did she really plan a skit to mock her own mom?" Another replied, "I heard her talk about an apron joke." Tessa looked at Corinne with wide eyes. "Did your mother hear us rehearsing?" Corinne's hands trembled. She never fights back. She whispered to herself. She never. Drew cut her off. She did tonight. He folded the papers, set them back into the envelope, and handed it to her. Then he grabbed his coat from the back of a chair. "I cannot stay for this," he said, and without waiting for a reply, he walked out of the hall. Corinne stood frozen in the center of the room, the envelope hanging loosely at her side, the lights reflecting off her dress as if mocking the shine she'd tried so hard to maintain. It was the first time in years that the performance she built didn't go her way. The first call came before I even finished taking my coat off. The phone vibrated in my pocket, Corinne's name bright on the screen. I let it ring. I hung my coat on the hook by the door, smoothed the sleeve the way Edgar used to, and walked into the kitchen. The kettle was still where I'd left it. I filled it with water, set it on the stove, and turned the burner on. The second call came as the water started to warm. My phone buzzed across the counter, rattling against a ceramic coaster. I did not touch it. The third call barely gave me time to breathe between rings. I pressed the side button, silencing it. By the fourth call, the kettle had begun to whistle. I reached for it, poured the steaming water over a bag of chamomile, and watched the color swirl outward. The scent rose with the steam, warm and floral. It felt like something inside my ribs loosened for the first time in years. The fifth call didn't even surprise me. I moved through the small kitchen, taking my mug to the living room. The cottage smelled faintly of cedar and old books. My hands curled around the cup as I sat down in the armchair Edgar bought me in our first year of marriage. Corinne's name lit the screen again. I let it go to voicemail. The sixth call came with a voice message. The tone shifted, no longer sharp, not yet soft. A brittle in between. The message began with her breath. Fast, unsteady. Then her voice broke through. "Mom, you cannot just disappear. You cannot do that to me." I closed my eyes and listened. Her words weren't reaching for understanding. They were reaching for control. "You embarrassed me," she said. "You ruined the whole night." Everyone was looking at me like I had done something awful. I had to explain so many things. "You made this harder than it needed to be." She paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, "I need you to call me back. Fix this. Fix this." The phrase tightened something inside me. Old, familiar pressure. The sort that used to make me small without me even noticing. I put the phone face down on the table. The seventh call came just as I stood up to stretch my legs. The phone buzzed against the wood, vibrating like a trapped insect. I did not move to answer it. I sipped my tea instead, letting the warmth settle into my hands. Behind the buzz, behind the urgency in her voice that now filled my voicemail box, a surprising stillness grew inside me. Not pride, not victory, peace, real peace. The kind that wasn't borrowed from politeness or purchased with apology, a quiet peace that stayed in my chest and didn't leave. The eighth call came, and the ninth. I set the mug down and walked to the window. The world outside was dark, but the porch light cast a small circle of gold against the cold air. I watched it flicker, steady and calm. The 10th call didn't bother me anywhere near as much as the first. My phone eventually stopped ringing. The cottage settled back into silence, as if reclaiming the space Corinne's voice had tried to fill. I breathed in that silence and let it settle around me like a blanket I had earned. For the first time in a long time, I did not rush to mend, soothe, or smooth the edges of someone else's chaos. I simply let the phone rest, untouched. The 11th call came just after I finished washing my teacup. The phone lit up again. Corinne, I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, I picked up. She didn't even give me time to breathe. "Where are you?" she screamed. Her voice cracked like glass under pressure. "Mom, do you hear me? Where are you right now?" I held the phone away from my ear for a moment, letting the sharpness settle. When I brought it back, I kept my voice steady. "I am home." "Corinne, you cannot just walk out like that," she snapped. Everyone saw the envelope. I had to stand there while they whispered. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I sent you information you needed," I said. "Nothing more. You blindsided me." Her breath hitched. "You embarrassed me in front of the entire committee. People are calling me irresponsible. They think I lied about the building." Drew left. "He walked out because of you. You managed that situation yourself," I said quietly. "I only clarified the truth." "Mom, stop talking like that and come fix this," she shouted. "You are going to tell them it was a misunderstanding. You are going to tell them you changed your mind. You are not doing this to me." I let her words hang in the air. The edge in them was familiar, the same edge she used whenever she wanted something she believed she deserved without question. She kept pushing. "Say something, Mom," I did. "Corinne," I said, "did you enjoy my gift?" The silence that followed was nothing like the ones she used to force onto me. This one pulled the air out of the room, hers, not mine. I imagined her standing in the middle of that decorated hall, phone trembling in her hand, unable to believe she'd lost control of the script. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller, brittle at the edges. "You cannot talk to me like this." I said, "and I am." "This is not how families handle problems," she said. "This is how I am handling it," I replied. She inhaled sharply, anger rushing back to fill the space where certainty had been. "I will come to your house," she said. "We will talk in person. You will fix this before Christmas morning." "No," I said. "You will not come here. You cannot stop me." I answered, "and I will." Her breath caught. "Mom." "All communication goes through my attorney now," I said. "Her name is Lydia Caro. You already know her." For a moment, I thought she might cry or scream or beg. Instead, she made a small, strangled sound, a sound I had never heard from her in all her adult life, and then the line went quiet. She didn't hang up. She just stopped speaking. I let the silence sit between us until it settled in fully, until I felt it reach the parts of my life that had been stretched thin for years. Then I ended the call myself. After I hung up on Corinne, the house did not feel empty. It felt still. I stood in the middle of the living room, phone in my hand, and listened for the familiar rush of guilt that usually followed any boundary I tried to set. It did not come. My heart was beating harder than usual, but it was not racing away from me. It was steadying itself. I set the phone on the table and went to the small bookshelf by the window. On the top shelf sat a stack of old notebooks where I used to keep lists, grocery lists, reminder lists, birthday lists, tasks for school when I still worked. At some point, I had started a list titled Things I Did Not Say. It was half filled with phrases I had swallowed over the years. That hurt my feelings. "Please do not speak to me like that in front of others. I am tired too. I am not your prop." I ran my fingers down the page and felt a strange sense of distance from the woman who had written those words and never spoken them out loud. The next morning, I woke to the sound of the mail slot clattering. Real mail had become a rare thing, drowned out by emails and texts and group chats. I padded out in my slippers and picked the envelopes up from the rug. 2 holiday cards from neighbors, one credit union newsletter, and a thick, hand-addressed envelope from my sister, Elaine, who lived down near Vancouver. I opened hers first. Mar, I heard what happened at the church. Do not ask how. Small-town gossip travels fast, even when it has to cross counties. If what I heard is even half true, then I am proud of you. You should have been drawing lines years ago. You are not cruel. You are not ungrateful. You are not dramatic. You are a woman who has been carrying far too much on a back that already held enough grief. Love, Elaine. I read the letter twice. Then I set it down and realized my eyes were wet. But my throat did not burn. These were not the tears that used to come after Corinne's sharp comments, the kind that carried shame with them. These felt like something loosening. Later that day, I received an email from my nephew, Jonah. He was in his 40s now, living in Seattle, working as a social worker. Aunt Marion, Mom told me some of what happened. I just wanted to say, good for you. People talk a lot about setting boundaries, but most never do it. I know you love Corinne. You can love someone and still refuse to let them step on you. If you ever want to come down to the city for a weekend, I have a spare room. We can walk, drink bad coffee, and complain about the traffic together. You deserve gentler company, gentler. I smiled at that last line, a small, genuine curl of the mouth that I did not force. For so long, I had acted as if Corinne were my only measure of whether I was doing motherhood correctly. If she was pleased, I had succeeded. If she was angry, I had failed. It had never been spoken out loud, but it sat under every interaction. Now, with a single envelope and a few signatures, that scale had tipped. I made myself another cup of tea and sat by the window, watching a thin line of frost cling to the edges of the glass. My hands did not shake when I lifted the mug. I could feel space inside my chest, where the constant worry about how Corinne saw me used to sit. I did not know what would happen next between us, but for the first time in a very long time, I knew that whatever it was, it would not erase me. I heard most of what happened next from people who had no reason to lie. Tacoma was a large city, but reputations traveled the same way they did in small towns, quietly, quickly, and without mercy. 3 days after the Christmas rehearsal, Corinne tried to recover her footing the only way she knew how. She went to the church board. She walked into the meeting room with her shoulders squared and her hair perfectly smoothed, determined to reclaim her image. I can explain everything, she began, setting her binder on the table. There was a misunderstanding with my mother. She exaggerated. Pastor Willis raised a hand. Corinne, we saw the documents. She blinked. Well, yes, but I can still fix this. Talia, the choir coordinator, folded her arms. You planned a skit to mock your mother. It was harmless. Corinne insisted. She is sensitive. I have to manage her reactions enough. Pastor Willis said, we need leadership rooted in respect, not performance. The meeting ended without her usual applause or polite nods. She walked out alone. That afternoon, she went to the event company she partnered with. She tried to secure a venue discount for her New Year's gala. They declined. The manager, Mark, spoke gently. Your mother's name is on the property records we saw. This feels messy. We prefer to avoid conflicts of interest. Corinne tried to laugh it off, but Mark didn't laugh with her. 2 more partnerships backed out that same day. Her reputation, once polished, curated, tightly controlled, had begun to slide out of her hands, and for the first time, people were not stepping forward to steady it. Her son, Lucas, refused to rehearse the children's segment she designed. I do not want to be part of it, he told her, staring at the floor. You made fun of Grandma. Corinne grabbed his shoulders. You do not understand. It was going to be cute. It was mean. he said, pulling away. Grandma always helps me. You hurt her. She called Drew next. He answered, but barely. I want you home. She told him. You saw what happened. You know my mother overreacts. I know what I saw. He replied. You were cruel. You laughed about it. She exhaled sharply. You're taking her side. I am taking the side of decency, he said. He hung up. 2 days later, a courier knocked on her door again, this time for her. Inside the envelope were separation papers. Drew had signed them already. There was a note attached. I cannot raise a child beside someone who thinks humiliation is a kind of love. The handwriting was his. The decision was final. Corinne sat on her front steps, holding the papers long after the sun dipped behind the houses. Neighbors walked past, pretending not to look. The woman who once commanded attention could not pull a single pair of eyes back to her. For years she had worn polish like armor. But that day, there was nothing left to hide behind. The call came mid-morning. I had been folding laundry, the quiet kind of chore that steadies the mind. When my phone lit up with Corinne's name again, I let it ring once, twice. On the third ring, I answered. All I heard at first was wind sharp, frantic gusts, and then her voice, tight with panic. Mom, the unit won't open. I folded a towel, laid it on the stack. Which unit? You know which one, she cried. My storage building. All my inventory is here. The Christmas sets, the lighting rigs, the stage fabric. Everything is locked. The keypad says the code is invalid. I kept my tone level. It won't open. It is mine again. She sucked in a breath that sounded torn at the edges. You changed the code. You changed the code on me, Mom. I have 2 events next week. I have deliveries scheduled. I have thousands of dollars of equipment in here. That equipment is stored on property you do not have permission to use, I said. Not anymore. You cannot do this, she said. You cannot just take everything away. I have not taken anything, I replied. I have reclaimed what belonged to me. A choked sound slipped out of her. Not quite a sob, something sharper. This is my whole business, she said. My brand, my image. I built all of this. You cannot ruin it. I am not ruining it. I said, I am telling you to use your own resources this year. She let out a small, disbelieving laugh, the same kind she used when a contractor didn't return her calls. Mom, please, just unlock it. We can talk. I will fix this, I swear. I didn't respond immediately. I could hear her pacing on the gravel, the scrape of her boots, the gusts of cold Tacoma air slamming into the phone. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm enough to sound almost foreign to both of us. You built a career on appearances, on how things looked from the outside, I said. You used that building because it was free, because I never said no, because you loved me, she said. I still do. I answered. That is why this needs to change. Her breath shuddered. If you walk away from this call, you're walking away from me. I folded another towel. I walked away the moment you decided I was safe to humiliate. A long silence followed. I could picture her standing there, hands shaking. Mascara smudged, the keypad blinking red each time she entered a code that would never work again. When she finally spoke, the words cracked. I have nothing without this. That is not true, I said. You have everything you created, everything you earned, everything that is yours. I paused. And now you will learn the difference. She didn't answer. I didn't wait. I ended the call and set the phone down beside the folded laundry. The room warm and steady around me while the world she built started to tilt under her feet. The first morning I woke without dread felt almost unfamiliar. I stood at the kitchen counter, waiting for the kettle to boil, and noticed something simple. My shoulders were not tight. My breath was not shallow. The quiet did not feel like a warning. It felt like space. I drove to the Tacoma Historic Preservation Center just after 9. The director, Ann Forsyth, met me at the door. She was in her late 60s, with the kind of laugh that made conversations soften around her. "You're early," she said. "I like that. I used to organize archives for the school district." I told her. "Then you're already overqualified," she replied. "Come on, I'll show you where we keep the fragile documents." We spent the morning reviewing old maps, donor records, faded photographs from the early days of Stadium District. It felt good to work with my hands steady, gentle, careful. Anne talked while she sorted. "You have a calming presence," she said. "I am learning how to use it for myself, too," I answered. During lunch, my phone buzzed, not Corinne this time. A message from Elaine. "Checking in on you, proud of you. Call when you want company." There was another text from Jonah a few minutes later. "Seattle offer still stands. Bad coffee, good conversations." I smiled into my sandwich. Support had always been there. I had simply been too wrapped around Corinne's moods to feel it. That afternoon, I stopped by the credit union to finalize the paperwork for the scholarship fund Edgar had envisioned. The representative recognized his name immediately. "He did a lot of good for people quietly." She said he liked quiet. I replied. I signed the forms, transferring the rental income into the fund. It felt right, like setting something back where it belonged. When I got home, the late winter sun was just beginning to dim. I set my keys down and opened the windows a crack, letting the crisp air filter in. I made tea. The chamomile kind Edgar used to say smelled like gentleness. For the first time in a long time, I sat in my armchair not because I was exhausted, or hiding, or trying to gather myself after another wound, but simply because the room was peaceful. The woman who used to fold herself small to keep her daughter comfortable no longer lived in this house. The kettle clicked off behind me. I let it. I leaned back. My hands were warm. My mind was steady, and in the quiet, I recognized myself again. Corinne's final attempt came on a gray Thursday morning. I was sweeping my small porch when a black sedan pulled up to the curb. She stepped out before the engine even shut off. Her coat unbuttoned, hair messy in a way I had never seen on her. "Mom," she called, rushing up the walkway. "You need to listen to me." I kept the broom in my hands. "I am listening." She stopped at the first step, breath visible in the cold air. "I need access to the building, just for a week. I have a contract due. I will lose everything if I cannot get my supplies." "You already lost access," I said calmly. "It was revoked legally." That was emotional. "You were hurt." "I get it." Her voice wavered as she tried to shape it into something persuasive. "But you cannot keep punishing me like this. This is not punishment." I said, "This is ownership." She stepped closer. "Mom, I am serious. I need that building. It is my livelihood, and it is my property." I answered. She exhaled sharply, frustration rising like static. "Why are you doing this to me?" I lifted the envelope already resting on the porch rail. "I prepared something for you." She stared at it as if it might burn her fingers. "Another letter." "Are you kidding me?" "It is certified." I said, "You should read it carefully." She snatched it from my hand and tore it open right there on the porch. Her eyes scanned the first page, then the second. Her lips parted. "This says, I am permanently revoked from all financial benefits tied to Dad's estate," she said. "All of them." "Yes." She swallowed. "And this part, Mom. What is this community service that is the clause?" I said. "Lydia helped me draft it." "What clause?" "If you want mediation," I replied, "you must complete documented community service hours through the Scholarship Fund's outreach program, the one your father hoped would help local students." She blinked at me, stunned. "You cannot be serious." I am not doing community service. She snapped. I am not picking up trash or working with people. I am not doing that. Then there will be no mediation, I said softly. She stared at the papers as if they were turning to ash in her hands. So this is who you are now. Cold cruel. I am neither, I replied. I am clear. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. You know what, fine. Keep the building. Keep the stupid fund. I do not need anything from you. Then we are finished, I said. She flinched at the finality of those words but didn't step closer. She only shook her head, crumpled the envelope slightly, and walked back to her car with her shoulders drawn tight and her pride wrapped around her like armor. She drove away without looking back. I did not chase her this time. I did not shrink. I did not fold myself into a smaller version to keep her comfortable. I set the broom aside, put on my coat, and walked toward Ruston Way. The waterfront air was cold, salted, alive. Waves pressed gently against the rocks. Steady and patient, the way the world sounded when it had no reason to brace for impact. I walked slowly, not triumphant, not angry, just free. Free in a way I had not felt since long before Edgar died. Free in a way I had not allowed myself to imagine. Near the railing, I stopped and let the wind rush past my face. I thought of all the years I had walked behind others, behind Corinne, behind expectations, behind the fear of being seen as difficult or ungrateful or too much. Not anymore. You wrote me out of your stories for years. I whispered into the cold, steady air. This time, I am writing the ending. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. Not Corinne. An email from the scholarship coordinator confirming that the first 3 students had been selected for interviews. I smiled. Revenge had never been the gift. Freedom was, if you've been following Marion's journey, I'd love for you to like, comment, or subscribe so more stories like this can reach the people who need them.